Well, let's try that again, but with oop. Oh, that's
I'm
handy.
intrigued. Yeah, I'm intrigued. It's fun that we kind of just went through this experience and got to see like two bad ends immediately, because, and this is something I like about visual novels, it's like it sometimes can be really rewarding to see bad ends because it colors more of the scenario than the good ends do, if that makes sense. Like a bad end gives you so much more information about the setting and what is happening and the like reality of the situation than you might get by otherwise stumbling through a good ending until the very, very end of a route, right? So like with getting this bad end, we got to see outside, we got to see the consequences. It like immediately wiped away any sort of pretense of like genuine or like not genuine. It wiped away any pretense that this world or the consequences of this thing are going to map to a easily understandable reality. In fact, it pretty much sets up that something bizarre is happening in a way that transcends even the base premise of like four friends go on a vacation and then disappear in the woods. It's like, no, this is like a Stephen King novel level, something weird is happening and people are going to inexplicably not talk about it. Or not know what's happening. So it's like we immediately now have a better frame of reference for everything that's happening than we would if we had just stayed and just got like a few more scenes in, because we didn't get to see the outside ramifications. And that goes the same for Sal's bad ending. We immediately got more context and understanding. So that's good, because it's really easy for visual novels to mess up bad ends and just kind of make them terrible and hard to use and not actually give you very much information. So that's actually pretty nice.
Well, it's like there's the element of like 999 where you learn something in almost every ending, and that's why like I want to say, I don't know if it's the submarine ending or the axe ending that's like kind of trash, because you kind of get nothing from it and you're like, what was the point of that? What did I even I remember that for specifically I think we got the worst ending first, and it was like, okay, that was a really long build up to nothing. We didn't learn anything from it. Like, what was the point? And that's like how you fumble that stuff. I have mixed feelings in that the mansion disappearing is like, hang on, what the fuck? Like that's a reveal that implies things. But on the downside of things, the issue I take is that I'm trying to parse what he was saying to us, what he meant, and what we were supposed to take from it. And like it sounded like it was leading somewhere else, because he said like, because it was supposed to, for one, it was supposed to be the incentive for us to stay, and he said something vague about how death will be looming over one of us regardless. And we never learned what that meant, because when we didn't stay, the obvious thing didn't happen, because we didn't take anyone else with us for reasons that are completely baffling, and so we never learned. And I to the point where I'm not even entirely sure like if that's what even meant. But like, I thought he meant that we'd all go home and then someone would die, and it's like, so like the act of staying is how we save that person, and that the key to saving them is in this place. But then nobody came with us, and they all disappeared, and we got no closure with any of them.
Everyone basically died.
Or they all went to Mars, to a utopia or something. Who knows? Like, whatever the fuck the good ending is, maybe they had a good ending because there was no Dave there to ruin things. Like, I don't know what happened. But, like, to the fact that nobody came with us, and we didn't have a mysterious death that we needed to learn how to prevent, kind of gives me anti-context a little bit. Yeah, like, that stuff... That stuff makes me think that the idea that death was looming for someone was talking about us staying instead of leaving, which means I still don't. It feels like
he has not made a compelling argument to actually stay.
like the point of that conversation was to say why we should stay. Like he was supposed to give us incentive to stay, and I feel like I feel like I then did the legwork myself to fill in the blank on what implication there could be of why we would want to stay, and that maybe even after the conversation is over and we saw the ending, I'm still
Yep.
doubting whether or not he ever gave a reason for us to stay whatsoever.
So I definitely agree with that. I think that there isn't much information that especially Dave would have right now that make a compelling argument for staying. I do think, however, economically speaking, the players now have enough information to make a decision and to
but only
extrapolate
after the
decisions.
bad ending.
Yes, well, yes,
Like the
that's
bad
what
ending
I'm
gave
saying,
us
though.
reasons to stay, but which also inherently like just getting any bad ending and then be like, well, pick different choices is our incentive
Yeah.
to stay. But like the whole point was he was having a conversation with Dave and was supposed to convince him to stay, and
Yes.
said out loud that he was going to convince him to stay, and then didn't really say anything to convince him to stay. And
Yes,
I don't know what Oz was going for in that conversation. He's like, oh well, I guess I
Yeah.
give up and I'll call a taxi for you.
This is entirely a blind leap of faith for
Yeah.
Dave as a character.
It's just
But,
it was a strangely written scene to me for those like several reasons, honestly.
Yes. But I think the interesting thing here is just that, like, it could have been an ending where it says, you went home, everything was uneventful, you never learned anything more, the end. And, like, that wouldn't be helpful to us. But it actually did tell us, like, it gave us more context to the outside world in a way that not even Sal's ending did. So we actually have some at least workable information from here as players that does transcend simply choosing other options, because now we know a little bit better about how the world works. It might allow us to inform later decisions that are unrelated to whether or not we're going to choose to stay or leave. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, I'll stay.
This brings much relief, friend.
But what am I meant to do now?
I would suggest sleeping. I'll see what I can find out for you and relay it when I can confirm you're alone. It is best that, in case one of your friends is behind this, my intervention of their plan goes unnoticed.
So, what? I'm supposed to doubt my friends?
In the interest of being rational, no. It would make no sense for you to put everything you trust in me anyway. Wait, it would make no sense for you to put everything you trust in me anyway. It would make no sense for you to put all of your trust in me, I think is what it's trying to say.
Look, yeah,
You
I
will
guess so.
need, yeah, you will need your friends to get through this.
And what if I need to contact you?
There should be no need. I promise that, assuming we can talk again tomorrow night, you can ask me as many questions as you like, and I'll do my best to answer.
You'll do your best?
I do not know everything, and nor do I wish to give myself away.
Fine. Fine. I'll have my questions ready.
Okay, well, sleep well, friend.
You too, I guess. The only thing that greeted me was silence. Not even any background noise to say that the speaker was still broadcasting. Okay. Back to trying to sleep, I guess.
One thing I wanted to point out that's kind of dangerous, and I don't know if it's going to come up. We get the shitty non-soundproofed room.
Like, you're wondering if people heard that whole conversation?
Yes.
I don't know.
Well, if we got the shitty not soundproofed room, that conversation was exceptionally dangerous to have.
Yeah, but I think that's not been a plot point.
Sure.
I think that what we're talking about a misunderstanding or a potential gap in explanation, in that the mansion was being introduced as being noisy, and then later it was introduced that everyone's rooms are soundproofed supposedly and you can't really hear them or something. I don't think the game ever said our room isn't soundproofed, but because heard noises before, we thought our room wasn't, maybe, but that could have been when we weren't in our room with our door closed, when we heard like how noisy the house was on day one.
No, but didn't Orlando say that one of our rooms could, like, our room could just simply not be soundproofed? Was it Orlando? I thought someone literally brought this up. They were like, all the rooms are soundproofed. Maybe yours wasn't.
Well, this was in response to us being woken up by a sound on
Yes, but no one else heard
that
it.
night, and not knowing what it was. But we don't know what woke us up, so it's not giving us too much to work on. Like, for all we know, it could have been Oz or something.
That's fair, yeah.
So like it's not really data necessarily. Just something woke us up. Like, it could have been the same thing, that it could have been the same voice we just heard in some way. We could have been prompted to be woken up. It could have been outside our window.
Could have been Sal coming into the room in the middle of the night or something.
Yeah.
But
we also just heard Sal outside our room, but he was like maybe right outside of our door, not like through the walls. Yeah. Like, I think about how, like, supposedly Stephanie doesn't hear me all day when I'm doing this, when we share a wall, but if she walks by my door, she'll hear whatever I'm currently saying.
Sure, but that's also dangerous then, if Sal's hovering in front of our door and we're talking to the secret man behind the curtain the whole time. Like,
well, we know
that's
Sal's with Orlando.
Too. Yeah. Well, I know Sal is. I'm just using that as an example. If someone is in the hall, this could be a dangerous situation for us.
Sure. I don't think the mechanics of this have been set up in a way that it would be a plot point.
I just feel maybe I'm making it up again. Maybe I'm remembering wrong, but I'm like 95% sure the thought was put out there. Maybe your room, specifically the one you are in, is not soundproofed.
Everybody yell it in the comments way too late when we're probably at part 30 by now.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just very puzzled by that. My point is, that could bite us if someone else knows that we are trying to solve the mystery as it is going on.
Or we'd especially be fucked since we really don't know even a single thing yet.
Yes, exactly.
Because we've really quite the opening conversation with Oz, and that he told us nothing.
Yeah.
Like, at all. Like, it's a revelation for us as the players to be like, oh, Oz exists, this is weird, and like, we've experienced the other endings, so we have like wider context to draw on. But from Dave's perspective, he kept being a sassy little bitch and refusing to talk to Oz, and then when he was finally receptive and was like, okay, I'll play along with your death game plans, I guess, Oz then proceeded to not talk to him really, and then the conversation ended.
Yeah.
So once he was cooperative, he then was not helpful afterwards.
Well, it's extra funny there too, because Dave this whole time has been wondering something's going to happen, and then when he finally gets confirmation, he's literally incredulous about it.
He's like, ew, don't bother me. I want to go sleep.
It's just like, okay, dude, whatever.
No sooner had I laid my head on a pillow, the rain started to fall. Soon after that, I drifted off to sleep.
Just
Day 7.
kind of bizarre.
Sal's still dead. I groaned at the sound of knocking at my bedroom door. It felt early, and was early when I checked my phone. Groggily, I got out of bed to answer the knocking, fingertips brushing the doorknob as it was opened by the person on the other side. Oh. I took a step back, and Sal entered, closing the door behind him, and shuffling nervously on the spot. I gulped, unsure of how he'd react as I remembered bits and pieces from last night, and what Orlando said he'd do once Sal awoke.
Orlando told me what happened.
Oh, don't worry about it. We thought it might happen, right? Sal shook his head, putting a hand on my shoulder uneasily.
Not that. He mentioned the freezer, too.
Oh, well, it was just a dream, right? I felt Sal's gaze bore into me, almost searching for something, before he looked away again with a sigh.
Dreams, nightmares, they're both scary. I'm almost willing to be mindful of them now.
Sal awkwardly wrapped his arms around me, quick enough that the best I could do was place my hands on his broad chest as he hugged me.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah. See you at breakfast?
He didn't even wait for me to answer before exiting the room, almost as if he was embarrassed. Still, I was relieved that the explanation from last night went over well, although I'd have to check with Orlando at some point to find out what exactly happened. I contemplated going back to sleep, but found myself just flopping into it with a sigh, grabbing my phone instead.
Good morning.
The sudden voice caused me to jump, expecting to have a moment alone before breakfast.
Did I startle you?
I rubbed my eyes, struggling once more to find a place to stare at while I spoke to the disembodied voice. Wasn't expecting to say hello so soon. What happened to talking tonight?
Ah, yes, I wanted to relay one last thing while I had the chance. I was going to bed, but you seemed preoccupied.
I buried my face in my hands, hiding my apparent embarrassment from someone who apparently couldn't even see me to begin with.
How did he know how did he know that we were preoccupied? I guess he could just hear us?
Maybe preoccupied. Maybe he just means because he heard Sal here, but
yeah, probably.
I don't know. Characters in this game somewhat like over-explain their like how do I put this? Because we've talked about how people kind of under-explain what's actually happening or what they want or what's going on, but they kind of over-explain like the moment-to-moment logistics of what's happening right now. Like, I will currently do this and stuff like that. And like, sometimes I'm just like, the amount of like, there's like this etiquette that feels alien to that the characters perform, like this strange back and forth of like sometimes there's several lines just discussing the fact that they're going to do the thing they're doing right now or something. I don't know how exactly to put it, but it's like an ever-present element. Like here, that's like there's a whole conversation just about the fact that he's contacting us, and I'm like, we can just say the thing. Like this doesn't have to be a whole. Like the extended explanation of why he's talking to us doesn't accomplish anything compared to just the self-importance of whatever he conveys being obviously self-important if it was worth saying, and so on. What did you want, Oz?
I have informed Benson that we have spoken. You should find him an ally of sorts, but he still has things he needs to do for me. Also,
he trailed off, leaving me with silence for a moment. Just as I was about to check if he was still there, he spoke once more.
Remember, be cautious. There is every chance that one of your friends is the one behind it all, riding the coattails of this vacation towards something malicious.
A trip where half of them didn't know they were coming, and they didn't know where they were going, and it's very strange to have the person running this not be the bad guy, honestly. It's why all signs point to Roswell. It's like, oh, Tyson's behind it all, because, you know, the guy that we invited on a whim and didn't know this was happening, and so on. I thought you said I shouldn't doubt my friends.
And I believe that to be the correct mentality. Merely, be careful.
Just doubt the one friend correctly at random. Fine, careful.
As for tonight, meet me in the library at 11 p.m.
Wait, we're going to be talking in person?
I believe this is the best way to do it. You seem to dislike chatting over the radio. Benson also believed that if there is to be some level of mutual trust, I would need to talk to you in the flesh. I am aware I said I do not wish to give myself away, but my want of seeing no one die outweighs staying hidden, at least for just one person, being you.
That sentence ends strangely. Okay, it took me a moment.
Additionally, there are certain things best left for in person. Remember, library, 11 p.m.
There was nothing but silence to follow. It seemed that for the time being, Oz was done talking. With the conversation over for now, I got myself ready and headed downstairs for breakfast. That first sip of coffee was always the best. I wasn't sure if it was the creaminess or the warmth I enjoyed more. It was almost the same as having a mug of hot chocolate, but there was something more about coffee that just felt better. It's the drug. Not even the perkiness that came with it. Something that I fondly remembered, even if it was a little sad at times. I looked up from my mug to see Ty looking at me from across the table. A cup of coffee in his hand, too. I had seen Tyson enough times in the morning before coffee to tell when he was too tired to properly function. Hell, I recognized the expression from looking in the mirror. Still, he shot me a quick smile before looking around the table. I took the chance to take stock of who was in the room, thinking back to what Oz had said. I was meant to trust everyone in this room, and I did. My eyes settled on Sal. Our eyes met, and he looked away. I couldn't quite place his emotion, but it was nice knowing he was still alive. I just wish I knew how to best approach what had happened. Also, specifically what Orlando had told him. For someone being told that he was going to end up dead, he was still very earnest when it came to approaching me this morning. All things considered, if it came down to a straight fight, he had the size and weight covered, with likely the brawn to follow. That's not even getting to the fact that he was good at wrestling. But he did also know some medical things. I just assumed it was first aid, but what if it was more than that? Still, did he have the heart to do it? I knew bits and pieces about him, but probably not as well as some of the others. It was possible? What? Okay, trying to take stock of who could be the murderer, I guess, right? That's the implication of this line. He's the guy who died.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't know. He may have died in the freezer and been murdered by the murderer, but you know, like, he vaguely, like, is good at fighting and might know something medical based on, I don't know what I'm basing that on. So maybe he did it. What are the medical things? Did I even...
I think I assume this is just like maybe sports medicine sort of stuff. This is an assumption. I have no idea where it was set up that he knew it. Other than he got vaccines as a kid. Like, I
think this is the part where no matter what route you're doing, he does an explanation of why he might suspect each person if you tried to figure out which one was the killer. But it's just really weird to include the person who literally died. Like, I saved him from dying. Now, which one of us is up to no good?
Yeah.
Then I moved to Dean. The main thing I knew about Dean was that he was a pretty good guy. Loved his family, liked to help out where he could, and wore his heart on his sleeve. But if Dean was the one behind everything, would that make sense? For starters, he had full access to any number of gardening tools, and knew how to use an axe from what I assumed. Any of which would make a decent weapon. I think everyone has access to the gardening tools. Dean doesn't have, like, the groundskeeper key. He just likes to go there specifically, but anyone has access to the rake or whatever.
Yeah.
And an axe, you swing it. You just swing it. Not to mention any sort of pesticides and other garden chemicals that he could poison someone with. That's even if he needed to poison outside, needed a poison outside of a harmful plant to the job, right? Now he's a master poisoner man, herbologist, dude. That's at least potentially a personal skill as opposed to can walk into the shed. The thing in his favor, though, was he was just really unthreatening. His argument with Sal the other day made me think that, at least, because he just got clocked, and that was the whole interaction.
Mm-hmm.
He is the second largest person, though.
Yeah.
By comparison, though, Tyson. I was ready to throw down at a moment's notice, especially if whatever was happening involved me. That I wasn't sure if that was reassuring or not, thinking on it. Now, was Ty capable of killing someone? Probably. Whoa!
I don't think Ty is... I'm going to just go out on a limb and say I don't think Ty's a murderer because literally no one knew he was going to be here and he didn't even really understand what this vacation even was to begin with. So it's about... I would say it's as safe a bet as us not being the murderer that he is not the murderer.
If
Granted,
Ty was
maybe
the murderer,
he's sleepwalking.
if Ty was the murderer and he's doing it of his own accord and motivation, then it would just have to be like a bizarre, out of nowhere crime of passion that has nothing to do with the wider plan of the whole mansion. Like, the entire setting would be irrelevant to him being the murderer. Because, yeah, he's just some guy that showed up because we just invited him and no one knew he was coming and he didn't know where he was going. So I don't think that works. But damn. Now we know the cards are on the table. This is what you think of him. You're like, yeah, Ty could probably kill someone. he'd probably do that. Yeah. But capable and willing were two different things. Oh, you mean physically capable is all you mean. Okay. I guess. He could do it in a pinch. I honestly don't think Ty would ever intentionally kill someone. But accidentally, I could see it happening. Get him angry enough, throw him into a rampage. He probably wouldn't need a weapon at that point. Now, Roswell. My first impression was that he'd be more of a victim rather than a killer. His stature was enough to make me think that at least, but it was possible? He was smart enough to probably pull something off or somehow organize it to overcome the lack of his strength, maybe? After all, it didn't take all that much strength to shoot someone if you had a gun, so there was that. What I did know is that Roswell was typically easily upset when it came to, well, anything about death. I don't think he'd be able to hold it together if he killed someone without giving himself away. That's suspicious. That's deeply suspicious to me, in that the writing did not acknowledge any of Roswell's situational, connections to, this whole scenario. Roswell is the closest thing to being a person who organized this. He's the most connected to the plan, and Dave not being suspicious of that feels a little bit of like a character being dumb for the plot and not acknowledging the obvious thing. It's just he's small and weak, and I don't know, maybe he'd make a crazy Home Alone trap or something. But I'm like, Roswell brought us all here. How does that not come up mentally?
Yeah, I think so. Here's something that I want to put it out there. My two predictions for who is doing this. And I think that obviously the game sets up Roswell very strongly for clearly being the one that is ringleadering this. But I also think Haas is a pretty good pick because he's not really doing anything, hasn't been helpful, doesn't really know everyone that well, and sticks to himself. Which is
Haas is the specific character. Actually, Dean to an extent too, but Haas and Dean, if you don't choose to specifically hang out with them, they almost never appear in scenes.
Yes, and I think it's definitely possible that Dean does it, but people aggressively dislike Dean, or Dean seems to be, he comes off too, how do I explain this? He's a little bit too abrasive for me to immediately discount him as the murderer. He literally just seems like he's just a doofus is like the best way to describe it, which totally could mean that he's the murderer, but like I don't think the murderer is the type to like accidentally insult someone, cause a scene, and then get knocked out in the first day. Like that just like seems like a really weird thing for the murderer to do, because it's like a level of chaos that I don't think a mastermind has. However, I'm gonna say a vague spoiler, not really a spoiler if you don't know the context, for the movie You're Next. But it could be like a You're Next situation, and Keith will understand what I mean by that without getting into it.
It is the one specific thing to remember about You're Next.
It is the one thing that could
claim to fame. Its premise, basically.
Yes, it could be a You're Next situation with Dean being the mastermind, but I don't know if I buy it. So there's that. And without context, that won't make any sense at all, I promise you.
Orlando's super sussy Baka because he feeds everyone any day and you could take him out any time.
Yeah. Orlando definitely is a possibility, but
honestly, the most suspicious thing about Orlando, and one thing is I don't know if he's just being set up constantly because he's involved in Sal scenes so far, so he had to be set up more, and maybe he doesn't show up as much in other routes. Or he's always set up this much, in which case Orlando has the most presence out of any character in this game, seemingly, in that he is in this game constantly for someone we're not actually choosing ever.
Yep.
And that makes him inherently like structurally suspicious, as like better keep setting up the villain.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was gonna say the other thing is that Orlando could be teamed up with someone to facilitate all of this, and that's also why he's the first person to find Sal as well.
Also, Sal died in the kitchen, and who knew how to run the stuff in the kitchen?
Yes. Well, so this gets to something, and I was just checking our old recordings really quickly because I wanted to confirm a few things. And the first thing that I confirmed was that on the very first day, even though Orlando was there, or Benson was there to serve dinner, Orlando was the one who prepared dessert that night. So Orlando has been cooking since day one. Literally since the moment they got there, since we could have investigated the kitchen, he has been actively feeding us, which is a very weird thing to do when the pretense of that scene is that we are being catered to. Why is he doing that when there literally was going to be food for us? That's weird. So there is a very high possibility that, as you just stated, structurally, Orlando is the person working on this, and their whole like I'm scared of everything occult is just a ruse, or like some ridiculous level of long con that him and Roswell have been working on. I'm not sure. The other thing that I wanted to confirm, and this gets back to the premise, was why I thought they won a sweepstakes to begin with, which is one of the very first lines in the novel that I opened the recording to find. The line was, word for word, "One of us, by some miracle or perhaps stroke of good luck, managed to get an all-expenses-paid vacation at a mansion up in the mountains for a month. What better way to celebrate than to have a taste of the high life before moving on to college?" Obviously, we know it is Roswell and through Roswell's connections that we got this vacation. But the implication here that made me think that they won a sweepstakes was that it says, by some miracle or stroke of good luck.
Yeah.
I mean, that's you can get that through a booking site. Managed to get an all expenses paid vacation. That implies that someone else is paying for it, which is not something that normally you just wander into
for some reason, but it wasn't.
Yes.
Yeah, no, we both, because we were both instantly 100% sure they won a sweepstakes, basically, or some sort of competition
Yes.
or something. And looking at the language, it still says that, basically, and that,
Yes.
like, if you watch any, like, game show or lottery, anything like that, the language is always like, win and all expenses paid, free
Yes.
trip to the Bahamas or whatever. Like, so both Stroke of Luck and All Expenses Vacation so clearly adopt the specific language that only comes up for sweepstakes and whatnot and things that you win, that the fact that the word winning isn't actually in that sentence is easy to completely miss, because that's what the sentence just says functionally. Like, that's just like that's what those words mostly mean.
The thing I wanted to point out here, though, isn't the fact that that's why I thought they won a sweepstakes. It's that one does not normally, like, if you invited me on a vacation, Keith, and we went, even if I did not pay for any of it and your family just was like, yeah, it's our lake house, like, you can stay here, that's fine.
You would
I
say
would not
it that
refer
way.
to that as an all expenses paid
No.
trip that I got
You would
by
say
a stroke of
Keith's
good luck.
family let me stay at their lake house.
Yes, exactly. So the fact, and this gets to the further aspect of this that I wanted to bridge to, which is the fact that it is set up as an all expenses paid vacation to a mansion up in the mountains is what I think made me think that this was a important piece of land, like a public space, rather than just some relative's house.
Yeah.
Which begs the question, what did Roswell or Roswell's family do to get us the right to stay on this purpose-built property that we now know clearly is built for a very specific reason, centered around this strange vault?
Yeah, there's a frustrating element where inherently people should just wonder what's going on and where we
Yes.
are and how this is happening, and just no one involved will ask the fundamental questions of what's happening and what this trip even is and how and so on. And there's like, oh, whatever. And at some point it goes beyond just like, don't look a gift horse in the mouth, because like you don't even know it's a horse. That's how little we know what's happening.
Yes.
and it has never been expanded. And when asked, even Roswell was like, oh, I didn't really pay attention. I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean you still don't, even you don't know what's happening? Wait, no one knows what's happening? Are we even allowed to be here?
And the weird thing about all of this is that immediately upon getting to the mansion, we're introduced to Benson, who is waiting outside for us, and the bus driver seems to know. I mean, obviously we gave him directions on where we were going, but like the bus driver seems to have some sort of understanding of what this place is and why he would be bringing us here. But because he's like, oh, we'll see you again in a month, hope you have a good time. But the weird thing is that Benson immediately is outside. He introduces this place to us as the Hammond Estate. And then later on, after bringing up, like, this is Master Orlando's cooking, he was in the kitchen, when we wander out into the hotel, the mansion, late at night, he's the person we run into, and he's the person who says bad things will happen to you if you leave your room, heavily implying that he understands more of what's going on. But the thing here that makes me really suspicious is that clearly he is also organizing with someone other than just Roswell, possibly other than Oz, and he seems complicit in what is happening, which I think puts a lot of suspect onto Roswell, because who could manufacture this entire thing if not him or whoever he's directly in contact with that facilitated this?
We
Right?
still have no idea what happens at night.
Yes. And the
We
way
just
that
got a
that scene
vague
plays
threat,
out.
and we still have no context for it, because nothing has ever happened bad at night still.
Yes. And well, the way that you just described it too, you said it was a threat. That was a threat, but we are now being told that Benson
I don't
might
think
be
it was
an
a threat.
ally.
I think it was a warning. I don't think he was saying he would do anything.
No, I don't think so either. But the way that he implied it is so... He could have literally just said, like, your life is in danger. Please do not leave your room at night. But instead he was like, bad things happen if you leave your room.
Well,
and then,
I
your
think-
character got uncomfortable. Like,
Well, I still think it's more of a
really
warning than a
weird.
threat, not nefarious, in that I think that he's probably told by Oz not to scare them off. Like, he wants...
Sure.
For whatever's running here, he wants people to stay here. And if you say your life's in danger explicitly, then... I mean,
Yes.
honestly, his weird warning would have made me leave already. But
Yes,
if you
but
went
that's
any
what I'm
further,
saying.
even someone like Dave might have left.
But what that's what I'm saying is that the game communicates to the player that we maybe won't be able to trust Benson until just now. It's like, actually, you can trust Benson. He's possibly an ally. And of course, it could be misleading us, but it just calls into question, who the hell is running this? And how is Roswell connected to them? Like, it's just,
No.
it's so immediately slated towards Roswell being the creep that, like, I just can't in good faith trust him at all.
Yeah, well, I think part of the issue is that if it is in any way not Roswell, we have absolutely nothing else to go on.
Yes, exactly.
In part because the entire context of the setting, there's nothing to hook it into a single other character we know except Roswell. Like the very fact that the setting's tied to one person and no one else is itself inherently just like, it makes it impossible to attach to anyone unless it's like a grand conspiracy, like, oh, they're all in on it or something somehow. This was all a plan. But even then, that still would inherently feel like they all had to be working for Roswell or something. Like,
and it can't be Tyson.
But they're also but they're also just like some high schoolers, so like they generally shouldn't have just like connections and whatnot. I can make massive leaps out of nowhere and be like, yes, Haas is behind it all because he's a true actor and he's been acting like our friend and like, you know, there's currently nothing. We just gotta just go, I guess, and just see where the hell it goes. It's very hard to theorize about much of anything. Haas and Orlando wandered back in from the kitchen, talking among themselves about something as they carried in toast and a new pot of coffee.
They did not carry me in. I plead the fifth.
Just looking at Orlando, I could tell that if he was the killer, we had a much bigger problem on our hands than we realized. As someone
that
who
is
can
an
breathe
accurate
fire,
description. Wait, what?
Yeah, we know he can breathe fire.
I didn't realize that. I guess I missed that.
No, yeah, it's been reinforced multiple times.
I thought it was just like...
When he first talked about cooking, he said, like, yeah, you could just breathe fire sometimes if you want. Like, it was talked about how he could incorporate breathing fire into his cooking, like, day one.
Oh, I thought he was literally just taking the piss. I didn't realize
he literally breathes
could
fire.
breathe fire.
That's also why he runs hot. Like, he's a reptile, but he runs hot because he breathes fire. That's why he's the source of heat. Yes, that's the whole through line there as a dragon, is that he literally can breathe fire.
From this whole time, I was just expecting this setting to be more grounded than it is, clearly.
Yeah, no, he can breathe fire. As someone who can breathe fire, the possibilities of him committing acts of arson was there. He was in the same class as Roswell when it came to the prospect of dead things. What? Oh, being afraid of dead... Wait. When it came to the prospect... He was in the same class as Roswell when it came to the prospect of dead things.
But how is that possible? Roswell is totally fine with the occult, and Orlando is terrified.
The premise, the core premise is Roswell is like, we ghosts, and Orlando's terrified of ghosts. So I'm not sure what that sentence is trying to communicate. Also, this is like the Be Really Racist chapter where, fucking... It's the chapter where Dave just starts profiling his entire friend group based on how lethal they are as animal types and so on. It's
oh
like,
my God.
No. I accidentally D-padded, I guess. That said, he probably knew how to use a knife if kitchen skills carried across to murder? Dave's kind of stupid. All right. Haas seemed to know what was going on. or at least he had a good read on people from what I could tell, but maybe that was cause for alarm. Of all people in the room, Haas is the one that had the worst, the one that I had the worst read on. That's correct, in that he's never around. He's just like, cool reading room, huh? Maybe that's his cover. He's just so into this reading room, so we never suspect what he could be up to. He's always in the reading room, but we ironically have a bad read on him. all the memories I had of him were pleasant, I guess. He was always outwardly friendly, and he was big on keeping people together in a group, inclusive stuff. Doesn't do that much, and that we've never done a group activity besides one hedge maze since the beginning of this entire thing.
That's also incredibly sus, by the way. The fact that we're not looking for the medals. Just want to throw that out there.
There's I'm confused why we all forgot about the scavenger hunt immediately, but also I'm just a background thing I'm thinking about constantly throughout this entire game is like, if me and my friends got together and nobody had work to do, like everyone was hanging out at one location, like a big building for a month, we'd be like doing stuff.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you want to go for a hike today? Or hey, let's all watch a movie tonight. Like, that's happened once so far.
We have an all expenses paid vacation, and we have not been doing things that would normally cost money.
Or even things that are first of all, I don't know what all expenses paid means when we're not at a vacation site. Like, this is
literally, yes.
Like, we are not. This is not a destination. No one was like, oh my god, we're going to the Bahamas, we're going to Oahu, we're in some woods where we can't go any, like, where if you go, everyone's afraid of getting lost in the woods. So it's just a building. So, okay, but so it reduces it to like, okay, let play video games all day, or watch movies, or play whatever's in the casino room. Like, there's probably like pool or something. Everybody hang out in the pool together. There's still like a bunch of activities that you would potentially do, but the group always splits up and stares at paint for 6 hours and then comes back for the next meal 3 times a day. To the point where everyone calling out Orlando for cooking is weird, because Orlando's the one that's having the most fun and doing a thing he wants to do.
He's literally just doing the thing he likes.
Yeah, like Tyson and Sal exercise once a day, and that's their most self-driven behavior. And we're not really given much, like, I guess if we hung out with Dean more, we'd see that he's probably really freaking out about his gardening every day, really invested in somebody else's gardening for a month, and then is gonna leave it, I guess. But the fact that there's no group activities, like, every time I go on a vacation with people, we go do things together all the time. And periodically throughout that trip, I feel like an alien for explaining the concept of vacations to people, but it's because that what I'm seeing is so alien to that I feel like I have to detail this. Like, you go do stuff all day. Like, we're gonna go. In fact, like, I've been on multiple vacations with you. Like, oh, we're gonna go meet up at the pot sticker place. We're gonna go to that panel at PAX. We're gonna go check out that place for dinner. Like, we're all gonna go to that bar together. And what happens is you and your friend group all plan out a series of things you're all gonna do all day. And, you know, the people who are feeling a little out of it sit 1 or 2 things out midway through, and it's like, it's normal to like have individual people drop in and out over the course of it. But generally speaking, your friend group is a friend group that does stuff. and you see that in Echo. Like, Echo has to specifically explain why the groups, the friends, isn't together at various parts of the trip, because of it has specifically, like, everyone goes to the fair together, the carnival or whatever it's called, and then they have a big blow up because they're specifically all trying to do stuff together, but they're such a rocky friend group that Flynn blows things up and the group splits. And then the rest of the week is people kind of hanging out in groups of 2 or 3, but trying to avoid a specific other person in the group. And like, it's built around, like, the entire narrative is built around trying to explain why everyone's not in the same room together, specifically because of how unusual that is.
Yeah.
So to have a game not even consider the idea that everyone would be hanging out together all the time, and only be like, oh yeah, you know, like on day 5 everyone watched a movie and ate pizza together, and that was like the one group activity we've had, is like, I'm so confused what everyone's doing for fun on this trip, because I kind of thought that the bad stakes would just start sooner and they'd be stuck here, and that'd be a way of explaining why everyone's like despondent and split up and dealing with the trauma differently, and their stakes and their scenario differently, and like their emotions and friend groups are fraying as things are getting worse and people have different ways of responding to the situation. But given that nothing's been happening and until this time in the week, everyone's behavior is incredibly strange, and it's to the detriment of the friend group, because the more you have people interact in larger groups for longer periods of time, the more you learn about everyone involved as characters and how they, because like that's why we have so many questions about which people are even friends in this group, and what do they do for a living? Do they do things for a living, or are they just fresh out of school going into looking for college, or do other people that have jobs, or there's elements of this that we're not learning because of the lack of overall group interactions. And I think it's because it's written around the idea of you starting over and doing entirely separate routes with each individual character and having one-on-one scenes with them that explain stuff about them. But the end result is that nobody acts like a person on a vacation.
Yeah. Interesting. I'm so curious if this is going to be like other, for lack of a better word, death game visual novels where you can puzzle out the mystery before it tells you what the actual, like, before it tells you the answer.
Yeah, or it will just come out of nowhere. There was a secret
or if it's like
guest.
A character that's not introduced yet.
Like the two most infuriating options are, oh, that guy that died on the first day, he was the bad guy all along secretly. He never died, which nobody's died yet, but it's the worst when it happens. And then the alternative is a completely new character you've never met before was behind it all, and there wasn't a mystery essentially, and that none of the people that we told you to suspect were involved. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, I'm curious.
All of the memories I had of them were pleasant, I guess. He was always outwardly friendly. He's big on keeping people together in a group. Inclusive stuff, right? That's what sent me on that whole rant. This has been a rant-heavy episode. I feel a little bad, but it's just like
No, this is good because it means
we're supposed to discuss the mystery, and sometimes that comes down to what the fuck everyone's doing.
Yeah, this is the first time we've had to actually dig into the mystery because we have a better idea of what the mystery is now.
But maybe that was a cover. Maybe he just wanted everyone around so he always had an alibi. When?
I mean, he's doing a bad job of that because he's always fucking alone.
Yeah, when is he always in groups for an alibi? We never see him. It was too hard. I didn't want to believe that anyone here was a murderer, and I pushed thoughts further down into my gut. As far as Oz, though, was it possible that someone here was pretending to be him? We don't know who Oz is, so why would someone pretend to be Oz? Wait, what would that function as? My immediate thought went to Haas, with acting and all, then Roswell. I guess he means is one of these people Oz?
Yeah.
Is somebody pretending to be Oz would be a strange way to put it, because it implies that they're impersonating a person we know, which we don't. We don't know who Oz is. Then to Roswell, because, well, smart. Once again, he never. Okay. Here we go. Knew how to do the spooky thing, and he was the one that organized the trip. Okay, there we go. Finally, we're acknowledging that Roswell is the person that did this.
What? Well, smart. Knew how to do the spooky thing. What is the spooky thing?
I don't know. I guess he just means Oz scared him, and Roswell is horror savvy because of occult. I'm guessing that's what they mean by that. After that, though, Orlando? It'd be like role playing, so that's a thing. Is Orlando big into role playing, like tabletop, like?
No, in the bedroom.
Yes, yeah, Daddy. Sal, maybe? Talking through a radio might be easier for him than in person, but because he's just awkward. I feel like Dave is extreme, like, he's writing fan fiction at this point. The level
Dave
to
is
which his,
the least qualified detective to solve this mystery.
Almost nothing he's saying is based on data. It's brutal. That just left Dean and Tyson. Dean was more likely of the two, given he was prone to being level-headed when not being overly flirty. But would he go through the method of setting up a radio, though? Dean is more likely than Tyson to impersonate Oz because he's level-headed. What about Tyson's more likely to do it because he's a bully and fucks with people for fun? He's a little prankster. He's a gremlin. I was mid-growl. What? Before I became aware of the looks I was getting. I was halfway out of my seat before Roswell eased me back down gently.
Are you all right, Dave?
He just got up growling based on his suspicions that are based on trash. Is that what was happening just now? Is that what I'm supposed to take from that? Like, that's it. It must be him. I'm gonna get him. That's I was mid growl before. He just starts growling and gets up. Okay.
You're not usually one to growl.
Should we be concerned?
Well, he's out of coffee for starters. Someone should pour him another cup before he gets cranky.
Oh, dear. Well, Dean? Pass the coffee, please. Before we're all murdered by this guy we should all be suspicious of all of a sudden.
That's another good point. Just want to put that out there. Huge possibility we're the murderer. Gonna say. He literally just as valid.
That seems most likely, honestly, at this point. Is that we know everybody and we have sleeping problems. Which is potentially a sign that we're getting up at night. Because they kept planting the seed over and over again that we're getting up every night, and not that we're getting up every night, but we feel tired all the time and like we didn't sleep well, even though we're sleeping all the time. And so to me, that just feels like that just means that Dave is getting up and doing stuff. Orlando took the coffee pot from Dean and refilled my mug, just enough to make sure that there was still room for milk. We should do a thing. I gulped, standing suddenly, and almost knocking over my coffee. That would be difficult given that it's on a giant table. Swiping it from the table, taking the milk from Orlando and topping it up, I drank deep, setting it back down with a resolved sigh. It was a fact that my friends were being targeted by someone and dying, somehow, with no leads, with no clues to work from. What options we had were limited. As Dad used to say, safety came in numbers. So the more we were together, the less chances someone would have to pick us off, right? It makes sleeping harder, but it was worth a shot. Oh, we're gonna sleep in the same room too. I mean, yes, you guys should hang out on your vacation together. I'm glad that the threat of death is what it took to do that. Yeah, let's do a thing. If only we had some kind of like group activity that was supposed to take all month that we could focus on. Someone's perky this morning. I'm not opposed to doing anything. You have something in mind?
Are we not gonna question the growling? I want to question the growling.
Just, I want to do something together again. Like movie night. As a group. That sounds good to me. Any ideas?
But why growling about it?
I'm not doing anything else. Would it kill you to be a little more enthusiastic? Whatever. I don't have to answer to you.
But the growling. Is everything all right, Dave?
I mean, you know that I saved you from dying based on a premonition, or at least you believed that enough to hug me over it. So you have the most context for this, Sal, about why I'd be like, hey, everybody group up. I'm fine, really. I sighed out, looking at everyone at the table and running my hands through my fur. I had everyone's attention at least, although I don't think I liked it. We're here on this vacation, and despite all being together, we haven't done much as a group after being here a week. Meals don't count, and even then, people come and go. This was meant to be. The realization hit that after this month was up, chances were I wouldn't see a few of these people for a long while. I sighed out, suddenly deflated. I could feel my ears drooping, feeling as though the first week was effectively wasted. Well, wasted beyond having saved one of their lives, but I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have had to do that in the first place. What about if we spent today carving a pumpkin? That came out of left field. That seems like a big enough activity, assuming it's as big as Dean says.
Isn't it a little early for Halloween, though? That works. If the only thing is not doing more things together, then, it's a problem we can solve.
I don't get how we're gonna handle this, though. Doesn't it take more than one person to make one of those... Doesn't take more than one person to make one of those pumpkin things, right? I guess I could help carry it inside, then bail. Make more than one pumpkin, damn. No. You gotta stay with the group. Fine. Fine. Jeez, you're pushy today. Kind of into it.
How about for the ease of setting up, we split into 2 groups? No point getting all us out to the greenhouse. More people will just get in the way there. The rest of us can make sure we have knives and such for when we get to cutting, right?
That works, yeah.
Then I propose Sal, Tyson, and Dean go do the heavy lifting while Orlando, Roswell, and I get knives and clear space. That work for everyone?
Sure. I can do lifting stuff.
And I don't mind trying to clear a space.
Alright, well, let's start after breakfast, alright? After I'd settled back down and had some breakfast, we cleaned up and broke into teams that Haas had decided upon. I didn't see anything wrong with this split, as in groups of 3 that seemed safe. If one of my friends was behind it all, there was an extra person in the group to get in the way of the off chance they tried something fishy. I figured I'd bring the pumpkin inside first. After all, wouldn't hurt to have an extra set of hands just in case, anyway. So now they're gonna do pumpkin carving in groups. Okay. So now he's thinking about keeping people in groups at least. So he's making a choice that makes sense going forward. But the gravity of the situation is not communicated to anyone, so whatever group he's in is just as likely just to like have someone wander off and be like, oh, whatever. Just because
Yeah. I mean, it's like an okay plan, I guess.
Yeah. It's it doesn't work. It's not gonna really save much. But
so it's just like I'm sorry, I'm so struck with a sudden possibility that I need to call it out before my mind slips away. Like it slips away from me. And it's that obviously, if you haven't heard of them, there are 20 rules for writing mysteries. It's written by S.S. Van Dyne.
The ones that the Zero Escape game literally quotes, and then like, I'm so smart, I'm gonna contradict all these.
Yeah, I don't know, I can't remember if they come up with Zero Escape, but they're a big thing in Umineko, which is why I'm thinking about them. But one of them is the detective should never be the culprit, and the culprit must be determined by logical deductions, and the character must be deductible. And the only other character that we haven't considered is the bus driver. And I just need it on the fucking record that I'm considering the bus driver in case anyone in the comments is like, haha, you missed it 20 episodes down the line. The bus driver's in my head. Nothing escapes Detective Toaster.
I think one of the rules is that there's no you can't have secret twins.
Yeah, you can't have secret twins.
Yeah, this series of rules was deliberately quoted in Zero Escape 2 or 3, and it seemed to be a snarky
fucky thing of like, haha, we're gonna secretly break every one of these rules, and it's like, it didn't work though, man. Like that game breaking every single one of the rules in that list, it was like it felt like it was supposed to be like this, like, haha, we're so good that we're gonna prove this list of rules wrong, but instead, if anything, I felt like that game kind of reinforced why that list of rules was probably a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, and there have been great detective stories and mysteries and stuff that break a rule, but it's always the idea of like breaking a rule to like prove the rule, if that makes sense, where it's like, just to use like the most famous mystery spoiler of all time, like everyone's guilty on the Oriental locomotive. Like that works because it is an explicit subversion of one of these rules that traditional mysteries are built around, and it's built from that premise of making that work. Whereas like just being like, it was twins all along, like doesn't really function. But I need it.
We need to see how this all plays out. We need to know.
Nothing's gonna escape
We need to see
Toaster.
how this mystery plays out. We need to know.